Hello, everybody. I am Ja'Quoi Griffin.
Your presence is not the absence of fire, though some would say it's so.
I'm originally from Michigan, born and raised. Benton Harbor, Michigan, small city. My biggest musical influence, it's a couple. So Israel New Breed, Daniel Johnson, Luther Vandross, Shay Norman. I think that would be about it as far as like my top four. My style of music I would describe as encouraging, inspirational, uplifting, smooth, with a worship undertone, and different.
How did you realize that you wanted to choose gospel as a genre?
When I started singing, I wasn't sure that I would sing gospel. I was actually kind of doing a lot of R&B talent shows. So the John Legends, Tanks, Anthony Hamilton. I was in that field of music, and I was also raised in quartet. So my grandmother was in a quartet group. So I wasn't leaning towards gospel. I just knew I wanted to sing, and R&B was the thing at the time, and that won me some money in talent shows. So as I continued to sing throughout high school and college, I think is where I kind of chose gospel as my genre, based on like the revelation I had of why God created me and what He wanted to do with my gift. My overall purpose when I sing, as cliche as it may sound, is for God to have His way. Anything that I do as far as singing is not to glorify self. It's for God to be glorified. I want people to be encouraged, uplifted. If somebody's struggling with depression, I want them to leave encouraged by the time they listen to at least one of my songs. So ultimately it's to reach people and for God to reach people through my music. My maternal grandmother, Doris Joseph, a big influence. I remember being forced to go to rehearsals and I hated it, man. I hated it. They were rehearsed. She was in a quartet group called the Vocalaires Gospel Singers. And her and one of her sisters, Rosie Murky, they both are deceased now. And I just remember being a bored kid, being forced to go to those rehearsals and not really knowing that I had a gift to sing at the time. Um, so as I look back now, she was part of the reason that I even had a passion for music. Um, she brought me up in church and in gospel events, and that was like my introduction to gospel or to God that I remember. So big influence. And even like now, like I'll listen to like some of her old songs and I can see like how our voices are very similar. And it's kind of scary. Freddie King and the Spiritual Sons. And Freddie King passed some years ago. And actually the guy who brought me into the group, I was like 12 or 13. Terrell Jones, his mother, Verdine, was also in the quartet that my grandmother was in. So we was kind of, family is what we called ourselves. But yeah, that was a quartet that I was in, 12 or 13, I believe. Christian Life Center is now known as Stone's Church, pastors Joel and Yvonne Brooks. I remember getting to college at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I joined the church because I felt like God was leading me there, and then I didn't go back for like another 2 years. But I knew I was supposed to be there. But that was a church where I had a different perspective of God. I grew up Baptist and quartet, and my view of God was very traditional religious. I feel like God was this higher being that I couldn't talk to, I couldn't hear from. And so Christian Life Center really helped to change my mindset of God. Like God is somebody that I can pray to and He answers. I can hear the voice of God. I can pray for healing and people can be healed right in that moment. So it really changed how I view God, how I view Christianity. They taught me a lot about music. Prior to getting into it, I didn't know the difference between special music and worship. They taught me what worship is. And not only did they teach me what worship is, but they allowed me an opportunity to exercise what I was learning. I was there for about 8 years, and that for me is like probably one of the biggest moments in my life where I feel like I heard from God and I knew more of what God wanted to do with me through my music and through my life. So I'm forever grateful to CLC, Stone's Church, Pastors Joel and Yvonne Brooks, and the entire church. They've been a blessing to my life. So I was at CLC, and we had this prophetic conference, and I got a specific word of somebody seeing me singing in the group. And for me, I'm thinking like, I get to sing background because I'm not somebody to just willingly go out to the front. I love singing background. Um, and so as I prayed about it a little more, God was not calling me to be a background singer in this particular group. So I wasn't trying to hear it. So long and short, me and four friends at the time, I just met with them and kind of shared what I feel like God was doing. He wanted to start a group, and we started February 6th of 2011. And then that grew to 9 of us total, like within a year or so. But it's Larry, James, Brandy, Chantrice, Jaleesa, Paige, Brittany, Tamara. I think that's everybody. It was 9 of us. And yeah, I learned a lot from them. Family, uh, they're amazing singers individually and collectively. But that was my ministry. uh, how can I make this short? So I was reading a book by Kevin LeVar, and it was called, I think, The Destiny Bridge, and it talked about like how Christians are supposed to live adventurous lives, and I just kind of felt something in my heart tugging at me to do something. So at the same time, I was also going through counseling to deal with like some of the issues of my heart, and part of the counseling was to help you to hear the voice of God, and then also to know why God created you. So I got clarity on why God created me in the earth. And as I'm going through counseling, I'm learning to hear the voice of God. I'm asking God, what are my next step? What is the next step? And as clear as day, it was moved to Dallas, Texas. And so I'm learning to hear the voice of God. And I think I'm tripping. I'm like, God just told me to move to Dallas, Texas. I've never been to Texas. I don't know anybody in Texas. Like, am I tripping? So I talked to my community about it and, prayed more about it. And God was pretty much instructing me to move to Dallas, Texas. So long and short, a year later, I picked up and moved. Pretty much it was a command from God.
Was it by yourself?
By myself.
Wow.
By myself. Yep. Me and my,
Off just hearing that one word.
well, that and like multiple confirmations.
Okay.
I'm the type of person where you can't tell me to do something I don't have questions. If you're telling me to relocate, where am I working? Where am I staying? Why am I moving? I have 1,000,001 questions to know what I'm getting myself into before I say yeah. So this was like a challenge for me to trust God with my entire life. It's easy to sing songs about trusting God, but when God tells you to do something that's not comfortable, can you just up and obey? And it took me a minute, but I wanted to be sure that I was hearing from God. So yeah, it was just a command from God to move. And once I knew that I knew, I picked up and moved. On my mom's side, I have 5 younger siblings,
Okay.
and my dad's side, I have another 6. My dad's side, I have an older brother, and everybody else is younger. When I told them I was moving to Texas, they kind of was like, okay, okay. My mom, I know she wasn't feeling it at all, but she held it together. She's like, okay, well, if the Lord said that, then okay, son, I guess we be praying for you. Ma, you don't really want me to move, do you? No, but that's what the Lord said. Okay. The siblings, they were like, okay, that's what's up, but they weren't really happy. They're happy for me, but not happy that we wouldn't be able to see each other as often as we have been seeing each other. But I was always that child that was away. High school, I went away to college. I was 45 minutes away, but I've always been kind of not really in the house all the time because I'm out doing a lot of other stuff. So it wasn't too much different. And I think that's what kind of brought them to kind of be okay with it. Yeah, it grew on them. They weren't feeling it at first, but I didn't give them a choice to be okay with it. I made the decision. I was moving because God told me I was moving, and they would just have to deal with it. And they've been pretty good about it. The transition from Michigan to Dallas was very challenging. Um, for the first 6 months, I kept my car packed just in case I decided to go back. I came here with like $750 in my pocket. I knew that I was supposed to be in Texas, and I was fearful of the unknown. And trusting God just with one command, like no college degree, no job lined up, no housing lined up, just a command from God. The transition was very challenging because I didn't really have a solid foundation here as far as community, um, and I had to trust God with every single thing that I was doing. That was new to me. Um, I struggled. I struggled. A car got repossessed. I'm sleeping on my small group leader's couch for 2 months. I'm looking for a job every day for about 2 months. It was uncomfortable. But when I look back and think of like, see like how God has brought me through that transition, not that God would have wanted me to struggle, but He still provided for me every step of the way. Like, were there some things that I could have done differently? Absolutely. But again, I'm learning to trust God with my whole life. So I'm missing his voice because I'm trying to be in control of what I'm doing. So I just had to ultimately just let up and God, what am I doing today? Where am I going? Are these people that I should be connected to? What am I doing? Where am I to be working? So the more I let him in, the easier the things got. But at first, struggle. If I could talk to my 27-year-old self before moving to Texas, I would definitely tell myself to finish school before moving. I would tell myself to save a lot more money and spend probably more time with my family and appreciate those moments with them before moving. At the time I was doing music, I was had started to work on the first project, Never Alone, and I was working on that before moving to Texas. So I was kind of thinking about that, connecting with people, trying to see where I can get plugged in. And I think when I first moved here, the first set of people, a group of people I worked with was Chris Wesley and Undignified Praise, who I still sing with to this day. I randomly hit them up on Facebook, like, I'm moving to Texas. I found y'all on YouTube. Do y'all need another tenor? And Chris was like, yeah, bro, come on. They welcomed me with open arms, and that kind of helped to get me a little more situated in Texas and slowly connected to other people. I am a people's person. I think people gravitate to me more than I gravitate to people. I'm naturally an introvert. I don't mind spending time with myself. That's how I recharge. I do not enjoy small talk, and I enjoy silence. And so sometimes if I'm in my phone, I'm either tired or sleepy or bored or just not really feeling social. But yes, I'm a people's person. I know how to be social when I need to be. Did my style of music change? I think I have become more aware of like what I carry, and more aware of like what I am to be doing, like more comfortable in my gift. Um, Prior to moving here, I was still trying to figure out my sound and what God wanted me to do. So the first project was just kind of like three songs that I thought worked. But from that to Mighty You Are, there was definitely growth. And then from Mighty You Are to Rest in God is just a whole nother level. So I've grown. The people that I've had an opportunity to meet and sing with have definitely challenged me vocally and musically. And that has kind of made me more comfortable in my style of music. So I think it was April 20th, I got a call from a doctor saying that, hey, your mother's body is starting to shut down. So everything just stopped in that moment.
Were you at work?
I was at home when that happened. And just to give you a backstory, when I moved here, my questions to God were, what about my family and what about my ministry? Because I've been like the savior of the family. If things go wrong, they come to me. And I've been playing the role of God. And I think that's probably the reason why God moved me away. But my mother and my grandmother were definitely two of the strongest people in my life. Consistent, unconditional loving, loved me unconditionally rather. Even when I was difficult to love, they never stopped loving me. Um, so grandmother passed, and then mother passed, and like 2.5 years later from breast cancer, and that hit a little different because my mother struggled with drugs. Um, was clean for like the last 15 plus years, and then breast cancer takes her out. But when I moved here, I had to become more intentional about praying to God about my family and whatever they brought to me, taking that back to God. God, your God fix this. So, in praying for my mother, the first time she got diagnosed with breast cancer, she kept it from us. The second time, I had a dream that either she was dying or about to die, and only told one of the other siblings. And so I wake up and I'm panicking, and I'm like, God, like I'm not ready for this. So she goes through the struggle. She doesn't take any chemo, no radiation, nothing. And my her mother Doris had breast cancer, but she survived it with no chemo, no radiation. My grandfather, who is still living, Bill Joseph, he had two different types of cancer and took radiation and chemo. And my mother saw how he responded to the treatments, so she had a decision to make, and she chose to not do anything. Um, so by the time the third time she had cancer, God was like literally showing me that your mother's health is at risk here. And so I struggled. I knew all along that something was serious. I just didn't know that it was terminal. So when the doctor called and said, your mother's body is starting to shut down, uh, I'm just like, God, like you've been preparing me for this moment, but I'm still not ready to receive this news. I'm not, you're never really ready to lose anybody. Um, and it's like, it became more real to me that my mother is not doing well. So I just remember like freezing up on the phone, like crying, trying to pack. I was about to drive to Michigan, and my two friends were like, absolutely not. Like, you're not driving. I was just a wreck. I was a wreck. I was a wreck. Her decision to not get treatment definitely bothered me. I would have wanted her to at least tell us what she was going through, so that we could be of support. And my mother was a very strong woman. She never wanted us to worry about anything. And so I know that she didn't want us to worry, but not knowing what she was going through kind of made me worry even more, especially being so far away. But I think that had she chose to take chemo or radiation sooner, it may have prolonged her life. Um, but that was a decision that we couldn't make for her. She had to make her own decision. And that also added to the hurt, is that, you have resources. And yes, God is still a healer. But I do believe that God may have wanted her to either get the part of her body removed that was infected, or to do chemo radiation sooner to eliminate it. But it was an aggressive type of cancer. Each time that it came back, it was more aggressive. And she made the decision that she thought was right. And yeah, I think like maybe a couple of days, no, about a week after that, she passed away. April 24th, 2020, at about 7:15 p.m. Yep. So it does affect me. Absolutely, it did affect my relationship with God. And sometimes people think that singers or worship leaders, we don't go through things, and we do. We human. When my mother, as she was transitioning, let me go back. So she, for about 2 weeks, no, about a week, she was not eating or going to the bathroom. And I found that out like on day 5. So I'm frustrated. God, you could have told me that she wasn't eating or drinking. So she fell over on the off the stool, and that's what caused her to go to the doctor, the ER. Other than that, she was just choosing to just let whatever happened happen. So as she
So
went,
she was at peace and ready to go.
I believe that she was at peace and ready to go. She did have a spiritual accountability partner that she was communicating with, and then a pastor of a church in Michigan that I think she had the more difficult conversations with, that she kept from us. And I tried to get some of that information, but nobody was letting up. And I just kind of let it be what it was. But just looking at my mom in the hospital bed, I believe that she had made peace with it. She had, decided, okay, if God is going to take me, He's going to take me. And she tried her best to keep that from us. But literally, it was God showing me what was happening that kind of eased the blow. But I still felt like God let me down. I felt like God, the healer, chose to not heal my mother when she was trusting Him to heal her, which is why she didn't take medicine. And for whatever reason, He didn't. So for a minute, I didn't want to sing. I didn't want to lead worship. And I had sung 1,000,001 songs about trusting God, but in this moment, no, I didn't want to trust God. I'm upset. I wasn't angry at God. I was upset. I felt let down. I felt like if I couldn't trust you to take care of my mother, I can't trust you with anything else. So for a minute, I was just not reading my Bible, not praying. I would say light prayers, Lord, thank you for waking me up, and that'd be that. But as far as sitting and listening to God, nope, it was nothing we really had to talk about, because you allowed the two people that I love dearly and who were a big impact on all of our lives to leave in a matter of 2.5 years after you told me to move to Texas. So how can I really trust you? That was my heart. How did I get to that place? Get past that? It was rough. God, honestly, when I moved here, He connected me to people who have lost all of their immediate family members, and I also have a few cousins who lost their mother a few years ago. So He put me around people who knew exactly what to say and how to surround me with the love that I needed, even when I wanted to be isolative, even when I wanted to shut everybody off. And even friends back home, one of my close friends, his wife lost her mother shortly before my mother passed away. So it's like everybody I knew could easily relate to what I was going through. And it took them, it took grief counseling, group grief counseling, and individual counseling to really get me to a point to understand what happened. I was angry at my mother, and I didn't know how to handle that because I'm angry and she's dead. I can't tell her I'm angry at her, but I'm angry because I feel like she took the easy route out. But counseling really helped me to see exactly what happened. Um, It's not that she took the easy route out. She did what she thought was best, and this was the end result. And one thing that really helped me to work on forgiveness was my counseling. My counselor hears from God clearly, and she really helped challenge me to take my difficult questions to God, and we sat with God until I got the answers that I needed. It wasn't no throwing scriptures at me, and oh, God looked in his garden and saw that he was missing a flower and picked it. It was none of that crap. She helped me and challenged me. God, I'm angry at you. What do I do about that? And that helped me to go to God with what I was angry about and get the answers that I needed to calm my heart, and to heal. God, one of the revelations was that God gives us free will. And at the time, I didn't want to hear that. God allows us, isn't God in control? Yes, he's sovereign, but he gives us free will. And in my mother's decision making, yes, he tried to intervene, but ultimately the decision was hers. He gave her that right from the beginning. So I'm struggling with all of this theology, and God showed me that he gave my mother the choice to make her decisions, and that was her decision. And we walked through some other revelation as well, but I that was something that I really struggled with. Like, God is in control. He's all powerful, but he gives us the control to make our day-to-day decisions. So if God is telling me to do chemo and I choose not to do it, that's on me. So I had to, while I'm grieving, my mother's dead. She's not coming back. And God is telling me that she made a choice that ended in this. And so I just had to sit with God and my counselor. And I thank God for my counselor. I still see her to this day. But it has brought about healing in my life, that my community, um, and just depression medicine, honestly. I was spiraling downward, like about to be in somebody's psych ward. And I just had to get on depression medicine and go through counseling and really lean on my community. And that has kind of helped me to be more stable. This impacted every aspect of my life. I miss my mom, man. Like, not even that, she was a perfect mom. She had her struggles, but she was mom. At the end of the day, she was the more consistent parent in my life. And to have that taken away from you, it hurts. So every aspect of my life was affected, musically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. I just wanted to stay in my room every day, cry, and just be upset. Eat when I wasn't I wasn't going to stop eating. That wasn't going to change. But everything else, I'm just like, I don't want to do anything. And I was at that point, not saying I was just going to walk away from everything, but I'm like, I'm good right now. Like, I'm not in a place to even pour out. I had nothing to pour out. I'm empty. And so I had to literally sit down for months and just, what am I doing? What am I focusing on? I need God. I need him to show himself strong and mighty in my life. Otherwise, I'm good on Christianity. Because if God can't bring me through this, the God that I'm singing about and I'm declaring that he's faithful and he's mighty, if he can't pull me through what I'm going through, then maybe he's not powerful. Maybe he's not almighty. So I don't want to say I challenged God, but I took my questions and my challenges to God and said, God, this is what I'm feeling. Help me with this. Walk me through this. And as God began to walk me through that, I began to see things from a different perspective and slowly get encouraged and get back in the groove of things. But now, I mean, my ministry, it's what I'm singing about has more impact, especially with some of the songs I sing about God being faithful. I know he's faithful. I can tell you he's been faithful in my life. Did my mom die? Yeah, but God is still a healer. I can honestly declare that now. And when I declare it, it's more of with conviction because even in the midst of all of this, Satan, you still didn't win. So he's shown me some things that have kind of challenged my thinking and challenged what I do as an artist, what I do as a singer, as a worshiper, as a worship leader, to be more intentional about what I do. If I could say anything to my mother in this moment, what would it be? Um, I miss you. Um, I'm very appreciative of all the things that you've taught us. Um, I forgive you for making decisions that you thought were right. Um, and we're struggling. We miss you. But what I'm standing on is God's promise. I know you're with him. He told me you're with him. So that keeps me going. But it doesn't take away the hurt. Some days I still want to pick up the phone and call you. Some days I still want to look through text messages. And even to this day, I still have you on my favorites. I'm just not ready to delete that. But I do thank God for the 55 years of life that we had with you. Um, I'm thankful for every lesson. I'm thankful for every whooping. I'm thankful for every no. I'm thankful for the difficult conversations that we had. I'm thankful for it all now because I see your heart more now than I did when I was a teenager. And I know I was difficult at times, but I understand. And even through everything, I'm still thankful that you are my mother. And until we meet again. This project Resting Guide, I had started thinking about this project shortly after the release of Never Alone, my first project. And God gave me the title as clear as day, Resting Guide. And at the time, I had a song entitled Resting Guide. But I kind of put everything on the back burner. I wasn't really pressed about doing a project. And I was home in Michigan for about 2 months after my mother passed. And I did some studio work with Sean Williams, who produced Resting God, actually. He produced that, and he reminded me of that song. So we did some studio work for another project. And while I was home, I worked with Sean Williams and Gabriel Carter just to kind of get the project done. And that for me, that was my outlet. That was my away time for my family because they do drive me crazy sometimes. But that was my fun time to work on music, and it just kind of came together. Initially, I was thinking of doing like a full project with up tempo songs, slow songs, but this kind of came to be more acoustic, and that was something that I plan to do like later down the road, like a live acoustic session. So it just kind of came together, song by song. I started working on Hurricane before I went to Michigan, and then we just started working on song after song after song, and it just kind of came together out of everything that I was going through, out of the frustration with God, out of the anger at my mother, out of just being over everything. God still allowed me to put out songs and be a little more transparent than I like to be. Um, and that's rest in God.
Are there any other projects that we can be looking for in the future from you?
Yes. Have I started planning? Not really. I'm always thinking about what's next for the most part. But I do tend to procrastinate.
Don't worry, you got plenty in your life
Excuse
now.
me. I tend to procrastinate. Every anything I'm putting out, I don't want it to be just for the sake of putting out a project. I try to be a little more intentional. Um, the next project, I kind of have an idea, but I'm gonna try to let Rest and Guide get a little more publicity, and then maybe start thinking about working on the next project, maybe sometime next year. I can be reached by my website, and if you don't already know it, then it's a problem. But it's Ja'QuoiGriffin.com. You have to spell my name right. It's Ja'QuoiGriffin.com. You can find all of my music there, merchandise. My social media handles are also there. YouTube content. You can find all of that there. I am Ja'Quoi Griffin.
Troit ENT.